Sounds good.
All right, it's all set. Over to you.
All right. Well, thank you, everybody. I'm very happy to be here tonight. I'm going to ask for a little class participation in the beginning, and most of you have cameras off, so I'm going to ask you to navigate to that little react button if you can. And you can do a thumbs up or a little clap, whatever it is. I want to know how many people saw the part one of me presenting, maybe a month ago, where we did an overview about applying for housing. Was anybody able to attend that? Few of you. Good, good, good. Not necessary, but can be helpful. Um, some of the vocabulary gets to be a little bit challenging, and I have been flagged for using too many acronyms. So if there's an acronym that I use that does not make any sense to anybody, please let me know. We all rely on them too heavily. Um, Second question I'm going to ask is how many of you have a loved one who is 18 or younger? All right. I'm seeing a good chunk. And then what about 18 to 22? I'm not seeing any 18 to 22. And then how about over 22? Few of those. Okay. So it's helpful for me to know that so that I can have an idea. And I didn't say anybody under 14. I was one of those people that started this really early because I was really worried. So wonderful if you're here that early, but usually we start thinking about it at about age, at the 14 is when we start thinking about transitions. Um, so uh, 24. Okay, helpful to know. So, what I'm going to talk about tonight is actual when it gets down to applying for the housing. And usually we suggest that this is something that at age 18 is when you start. Some people will start later, and that's fine, but the earlier you start, the better. Oh, I'm jumping right in. I didn't even introduce myself. Um, so I'm Andrea Entsminger. I have worked with Autism Housing Pathways and Kathy Boyle for the past several years. And then in January of this year, Autism Housing Pathways merged with the Federation for Children with Special Needs. So we're still figuring that out. We're still going through some growing pains. I still have three different email addresses and two calendars, but we're getting closer to being one organization. The part I'm most happy about is it does not keep us disability specific quite so much. It also gives us a little bit more infrastructure to be able to provide language translation, things like that, that for Autism Housing Pathways as a very small organization was really hard to do. 12, 7, and 3. I love that you're prepared and organized. That is wonderful. Um, so I'm also the parent of two young men now. I have to say that, not two kids. They are 19 and 21, and they are on either end of the autism spectrum. One of them is going to community college part-time, driving, working, and I say will be independent if I live long enough and don't run out of patience. My 21-year-old requires 24/7 care. He also has an intellectual disability, and he will require 24/7 care for the foreseeable future. He has very high needs. He needs awake overnight. He has some medical complications as well. So I live on kind of the two extremes. We often find too much support or not enough support. It's tough to find it just the sweet spot. Before I jump into the presentation, I'm just going to share a visual. And I always love when people tell me that you're seeing what I'm talking about. It should be a little grid with different homes, with different colors of little families and different arrangements that you see. Little like pictures of different houses. It says mass living arrangements for persons with developmental disabilities. Is that what you're seeing? Yes. Okay. So I put this in here because it's just a good little visual. There's three at the top, and then I'm going to scroll down and show you the other two, the other four, sorry. And it gives you a good little visual. These are all on our website, but there's many, many different models that exist, and not all of them are going to be right for you or your loved one. But the reason I like to share this is because most of them have this little green bar that says Section 8 or other housing. Section 8 or other housing. Not all of them, but the majority of them. And the one that I always point out to families is the one where you see a group home. I always lived under the belief that if a student was or a young adult was in a group home, Section 8 wasn't necessarily necessary. Housing vouchers weren't necessary. But it can really improve the living situations for everybody in that group home if somebody does has have a housing voucher. But I show you this. It's on the Autism Housing Pathways website. I find it really helpful because there are a lot of supports, but they can't all be combined equally. And you have to know what from column A can combine with column B. And I am a visual person, so I find that helpful. Mm. Okay. Is there a difference between housing and buying a house? Yes, we are talking applying for housing vouchers is what we're talking about tonight. And we're talking about house housing vouchers, usually for the individual with the disability, not usually for a family who might need that. And like everything in special ed, it's the same thing with housing. You all might know the term Section 8, but that's a term that covers many different types of housing vouchers. Okay, let me get my PowerPoint. Tell me if you are now seeing applying for housing, the cover white page that still says Autism Housing Pathways. This one I have not updated with the correct logo, but you're seeing that one, correct?
Yep.
Okay, great. And so when you apply for more types of housing, you're likely to get housing faster. But there are literally over 5,000 housing lists in Massachusetts. So, where do you go? Where do you start? We don't want to make this a full-time job. Um, Even when I was working with Kathy, my son turned 18 and I was so proud of myself. I applied for the centralized waiting lists for Section 8, and then I realized I don't actually live in one of the 127 towns that's covered by the centralized waiting list. Um, doesn't mean that that list isn't helpful to me, but it means that I'm very unlikely to get my child to the top of that list. So knowing what to apply for is a big part of the process. So we're going to start with a basic list of applications. We generally suggest a basic set to maximize your chances of getting some housing, but we really, as I said, we don't want to make this a full-time job. Um, oh, I think somebody is unmuted. Amy, if you can help me with that part. Thank you. So Section 8 is a portable housing voucher. It goes across the entire state, and it's called the centralized waiting list. There's a website that's listed there, affordablehousing.com. And then there is the EOHLC. And I don't know why we have the former acronym in there. One of them is already too much, which is a regional nonprofit list. Those vouchers also can be used anywhere in the state. The EOHLC list is currently closed. We do not know when it will reopen, but we will update on our website if we find that it has reopened. Is anybody on this call tonight? Has anybody applied and they have concerns or questions? Does that apply to anybody? You can let me know as we stop in that because there's some things happening right now, obviously, in our state and federal government that make it concerning. I had a letter that I was going to share that I received one of those. Oh, I hate with the screen background that you can't share it. But I got one of those letters. This is the Executive Office of Housing and Livable Communities. I must respond. I must respond right away. What does it mean? Most people on this list got this letter. Um, the Common Housing Application, also known as CHAMP application, is site-based state housing. So those are kind of your main ones that we're going to talk about tonight. And each one of these links, you'll get this presentation in the next day or two. It's a live link and it takes you to these and it gives you helpful hints on how to apply for each one. Other ones that we're going to highlight for you to consider, the Alternative Housing Voucher Program. This is also portable, but it must be used for a one-bedroom apartment unless a reasonable accommodation is needed. A reasonable accommodation would be someone like my son is not safe to live alone. He needs a live-in caregiver. So that would be considered a reasonable accommodation that I could ask for so that he could have a two-bedroom apartment covered with an AHVP voucher. Um, AHVP vouchers can be applied for. It's a special section of the CHAMP application. The MRVP portable, anywhere in the state. And again, this is a special section of that CHAMP application. So those are the kind of the basic ones that we suggest that you look at, and then two or three additional applications that are appropriate for your situation. They might include site-based federal housing or private affordable housing, and there's two good websites there to help you find those. Some of those that you would think of are commonly known as a 40B type of project. You'll hear that term a lot in Massachusetts. Sometimes you'll hear about state elderly and disabled housing. That can be what we're talking about when it's site-based. That means that the voucher is attached to the place, not the person. So we have a little formula and there's a little worksheet that that will also be sent to you that asks yourself to kind of look at your loved one and see what their needs are. Does my family member need to rent from family as a reasonable accommodation for disability? In that case, a portable voucher may be the only option. So I want to just talk about that for a little minute. When we say rent from a family member, a lot of times families will convert a first floor, a garage. A lot of people are now trying to build accessory dwelling units, ADUs, in their backyard, like a little nanny pod. Would all be examples of a loved one renting from a family member. Um, and typically, Section 8 wouldn't allow that, or housing vouchers wouldn't allow that, but as a reasonable accommodation for disability, they may. Now, in the garage scenario, it has to still be a legal unit. It has to have its own bathroom, its own entrances, its exits. There are still requirements. But for a lot of people that have that, that are homeowners, that can be a good option. Second one, does my family member need a live-in aid? In that case, elderly housing is generally not a good bet, as most of those are going to be one bedroom only. I think also when I think about that, I think of my 6 foot tall jumping young man that I have living in elderly housing. I don't know how well that's going to go. So that's probably not at the top of my list of things that I would consider. Can my family member live alone, but they need prompting throughout the process of activities like showering, not just reminders? In that case, site-based housing might be a good idea, as those things you can use Mass Health or Common Health as a drop-in service called group adult foster care. And this was one of those things on that little infographic that I showed you. We have a really good checklist on this link down here, and I'm actually going to pull this up for just a moment. And I'm going to pause for a minute because I see a bunch of questions coming in, and I want to make sure they're not acronyms or things that I'm
I
saying. So I'm
have been responding to
Oh,
them.
good. Okay.
So
Okay.
I think
Is
there's
it
not I don't think there's anything in there that's hanging.
okay, good. I just want to make sure it wasn't something that everybody's like, wait, did she say? Yeah.
Yep.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Yep.
I'm gonna just pop over and show you. This is the link that I opened. So this is another website that Autism Housing Pathways created. It's called 18section8.org. And it has all of the things that we're talking about tonight. But my favorite part, Kathy Boyle, who's the founder of this, she created this website and she has an actual sample applications on here. Did I mention I am a visual person? Because for me, I got to the first question and I was like, wait, my 18-year-old is a head of household? Yep, they are actually. Um, and are they a household of one, even though they need a two-bedroom? Yep, they are a household of one because we don't want to count the live-in aides income as part of it. So each one of these applications, if you click through any of these links, it shows you a sample of a paper champ application that she has completed. And she updates these regularly so that you have the actual information so that you can go in and fill it out. She's really done, I think, an amazing job at putting that in there. So it is possible to do this on your own. I will say, I think it's also really reasonable to need support. Kathy has something she calls a turning 18 birthday club where she goes through all of the stuff that you need to do as your loved one turns 18. Because I need somebody sometimes to make me sit down and actually start filling out that paperwork. Um, One other thing I wanted to just go back to on this slide here is the difference between prompting and reminders. So a reminder is, hey, Marky, it's time to take your shower. Prompting is make sure the water's not too hot. Now put the soap in your hand. Now put the shampoo on your head. Now make sure you've rinsed it out thoroughly. Those are two very different levels of support needs, and you want to make sure that you know what you're talking about. That terminology really matters. That also really matters when you're talking to any adult service agencies, DDS, and things like that. The difference between prompting and reminders. Okay, so we're going to go on to a little bit more of the personalizing your applications. So, where does my family member live now? State and federal site-based housing lists use local preference. Your family member is unlikely to get in if they apply in a community they don't live in now. If your goal is live into a different community, private affordable housing may be the only option, the site-based option. Some towns and organizations have portable Section 8 applications, and they have different waiting lists than either the centralized or the EOHLC. Um, are any of them appropriate for my family member? There's a checklist there to find out if any of them might be a good fit for your family member. There are exceptions, they're smaller lists, but it's always good to check that out. It's also, I think, helpful to go on to your town's website and see what they have to offer and see how long the lists are. I think it's a great idea if you have a local office to go in and make friends with those people and see what they can tell you because they will tell you when new site-based projects might be coming to your community. Um, I will do a little aside. I had a neighbor over the summer knock on my door because they were trying to get a group of people together to protest the new affordable apartment community that wanted to be built on my street because they didn't want people, those kind of people living here. And I was so happy that I wasn't home when he rang my bell because I really don't think that would have gone well. But there's often new things coming into communities and towns that you can support, and a lot of members of your community will want those. So making friends with your housing department can be really worth it. Okay, additional questions. Some additional questions can't be answered until you actually start filling out the form. There are two websites there where you can search. One of the things we really want to caution people against when you go through and you look at it, only apply for the properties that you're actually comfortable with your family member living at. It is inevitably the one that you would never have your family member live at, that's way too far away, that's on top of the train station or whatever else it might be, that you get to the top of the list on. Some housing authorities will remove your name from all housing authority lists if you turn down something when you reach the top. You want to take a look at the map, consider visiting the neighborhood, and only apply for what you're really willing to take. Don't worry too much. You are able to remove your name if you applied for something and now you've decided, nope, that's really not a good fit. I didn't know by checking off all of these things that my loved one would be that far away. But before you get to the top, you want to do that. The MRVP site-based units in my family member's town. If so, consider applying for those as those have local preference and you stand a better chance of eventually getting one. Again, the MRVP is a part of the CHAMP application.
There
When should
is
my,
one question
oh, go ahead.
before you move in. It just says, does live in mean current town or general area?
It means the town that they currently live in. Occasionally, you will be able to say that your loved one works or has a day program or some reason for being in another town, but they mean the actual town that your legal address is.
Thank you.
Um, Generally speaking, it could take anywhere from 3 to 12 years to get to the top of a housing list. If your goal is to have your family member living outside of the family home by age 30, start getting on the list at age 18. They're not allowed to apply earlier than that. But as a rule of thumb, there's a timeline below. 18, Section 8, that's the website's name. 20 to 21, site-based Section 8, federal and state family housing, MRVP, and private affordable housing. And then at 22 is where we would consider the AHVP, elderly disabled housing. You don't have to be 22 to wait for those other ones, but it can be a daunting process to do all of these. So some people will break them out and tackle them bit by bit. So how do we even begin? We have a housing search and application grid that I really like. And it does say that it corresponds with a video. We don't have access to that video this evening, but it's color coded and has links for all of the different applications that we're talking about tonight. And it is a really good roadmap into filling out the application. We're going to go over some tips and tricks when you get to filling them out, but I'm just going to show this to you so you can see what it is. I think the visual one can be easier to see. Um, so it talks about what's state, what's federal, and what's private. And it's color coded down here so that you know what website has each one. Um, it talks about site-based, it's attached to the address or the location versus portable, it's attached to a person and they can move where they want to within the state with that. Um, and it lists the different programs that are on here. And then as the links that match with the one that you're looking for. I think it makes it much easier to try to compartmentalize and figure out which one you're working on. One of the things that I hear a lot is concerns about our state and federal government and some of these programs going away, some of them being underfunded, and some of them, like Section 8, there's currently a bill that they're trying to say that it has a 2-year cap on a Section 8 voucher at the federal level because apparently my son is only going to need housing for the next 2 years. Makes my eyeballs sweat a little bit. But Kathy has really good advice on this. You know, we're planning for everything that we can. We're filling out the applications. We're hoping that we're in a state that has some resources, and we don't know what the future holds. I think that the thing that we know the most is that there are going to be more barriers and less people to help, and that's really one of the things that I'm most excited about with our merger with the Federation, so that we will be able to help people navigate these applications, navigate these random letters that you get that say, I have 7 days to respond to it, or else I'm off the list. Because I think that's how things will really start, where it will just be made difficult in the beginning. Um, okay, some tips and tricks. So, really get in your brain filling out the application. You're filling this out for your loved one in most cases. Um, or supporting your loved one to do this in some cases. Remember who's applying and who's going to be living there. Your family member with a disability is the head of household. Their income refers to their income, nobody else's. Income includes income from all sources, a job, any benefits, including Social Security, SNAP, food stamps, child support payments, gifts from family, any medical expenses the family pays for the person, etc. It's important also to think about their assets. These are their assets, their bank accounts, their stocks, bonds, IRAs. A vehicle only counts as if it's theirs if their name is on the title. So it is something that you want to think about a little bit. Sometimes we're fortunate to have a family member want to leave some money, and we want to make sure that that is done properly so that it is not impacting your loved one's ability to apply for these benefits. They are a household of one, even if they need a two-bedroom unit. I really feel like this slide might have been made just for me. They are still a household of one. And the aide cannot be a close family member, or it would be a household of two, and the aide's income would be counted. Um, sorry. Even if they want to have a roommate, they are still a household of one if they are applying for a portable voucher. If they are applying for site-based housing, make sure that they're the head of the household, not the roommate. If they decide they don't want to live anymore, only the head of household gets to stay. Although they'll need to move to a smaller unit or get another roommate, being the head of household is a little bit more of a secure spot to be. There are some situations where your information may need to be substituted. Use your phone number and email address if your family member is not able or likely to respond to calls or emails. Use your mailing address if your family does not live member does not live with you and is not able or likely to respond to correspondence in a timely manner. Make sure the physical address is that of your family member, however, as that determines the local preference. The exception to this is if their physical address is a school or hospital and their legal address is your address. So, for example, my son was at a residential school for many years. That was not his legal address. Even though he lived at a residential school, his legal address was my home. If it asks if reasonable accommodations are needed, examples might include the housing authority should communicate with the guardian. Meeting with the housing authority or landlord needs to be one-to-one with an advocate present. Explain the lease in simple language. The person needs a unit on a higher floor where it is quieter. Um, Interesting little fact, I worked for 10 years as a property manager. Before I worked in the disability community at all, I managed apartment communities and condo communities. So it's really an interesting to be on the other side of this now. And I always explain to people when you're thinking of a reasonable accommodation and deciding if it's reasonable or not, assign a dollar value to it. If you're asking them to put an elevator in a three-story building as a reasonable accommodation, that is probably a $100,000 reasonable accommodation that you've asked them for. If you've asked for a wireless doorbell to be loud to be mounted on the outside of the building because we want a specific one at a back door that only your loved one will use, that's about a $30 ask. That's probably reasonable. It doesn't mean that you can't ask for other things, but I think that's a way to kind of frame it in your mind. A top floor unit, a corner unit doesn't cost the community money to rent you that apartment over somebody else. The same, I would say, for visual fire alarms, things like that. They're not millions of dollars of things that you're asking for. They're small accommodations to make your loved one safe. If your family member, if you pay any medical expenses for the person, include the amount paid under that question about income, and again, and answer it under the expense part. So that way they cancel each other out. So it's listed in both places. Making sure the application is complete. Answer every question or write NA if the question does not apply. So, getting the application to the right place and your family member on the right list. Always make a copy of your own records before submitting a paper application. Print a copy of any online application. And it's a good idea to ask for a written receipt for any application and supporting documents you submit in person. You can also ask them to look it over for completeness. They may or may not, but it's worth asking. It's a good idea to mail everything certified mail with return receipt requested. That way you'll have proof that you mailed it and proof that it was received. So remaining on the list is another part of the process here. I have little reminders in my calendars that pop up at different times for different lists that we're on. Because they do want you to at least annually confirm that your family member is on the list. Make sure you use the exact name of the list in question. Many housing authorities administer more than one list, so you need to know what you applied for. Your loved one should sign the list if they're able. Otherwise, always include a copy of your guardianship. And again, we would suggest that you send it certified mail, return receipt requested. The online applications, you have to log in at least annually for the centralized waiting list. Um, sorry, this one requires you to log in at least every 90 days, and then it'll know and it'll tell you when it wants you to log in next. You'll also have to update the information and make sure that your physical address and the mailing address are kept up to date. This is something that I think it's helpful. I My renewal date is in February that I go in. That's when his birthday is. But I go in January because that is often when SSI amounts change slightly. And I don't want the application to be out of date because I didn't update that extra $19 a month that he gets. But that's the kind of thing that you want to go in, you want to check, make sure is everything accurate? Did anything change? Um, have we moved? Things happen and you forget, oh, one more thing that we need to think about. So it's really important that you check in on those. They will not send you a reminder. They will not say, hey, it's been a while. You'll just go in there and it'll be flashing. You must update. You must update. Now, it doesn't mean that they will just kick you off, but it means they can. If they had a reason to call the list, they could. Another really helpful one here, and nobody tell Kathy, but I haven't updated mine in like 12 months. We have a spreadsheet for you to fill in. Okay, the CHAMP application, I mailed it on this date. This is the address of who I mailed it to. This is when I need to follow up. Because often families will call us. We had one this week. It was so exciting. She's like, I'm at the top of the list. I'm at the top of the list. I don't know what to do. And we were like, what list? That was our first question. So knowing what you applied for, what it is, which ones you updated when, because it's a lot to keep track of. Applying for site-based housing through a housing authority, make sure you regularly review where your family member is applying. And again, remove locations you're not willing to accept. Otherwise, if you reach the top and turn it down, they could be removed from all waiting lists maintained by that housing authority.
Andrea, there are a few questions that came in that I'm not able to answer if we
All
want to take a
right,
look at those.
let's take a pause and see. Once we receive a Section 8 voucher, how much time we have the unit and get it approved? Do they give an extension? So generally, you'll have 30 to 60 days once you get to the top of that list. Very short amount of time. And generally, as a reasonable accommodation, you can ask for an additional 30 to 60 days. So it's going to be pretty quick when it gets there. Usually, though, what we're seeing is when you're getting close, they will start asking you for more information, income, updated, the statement of benefits, things like that. So you'll have some little clue that you might be getting towards the top. Um, it's saying to better prepared to meet the timeline before the voucher arrives. That I think is a really big question because that can be finding the apartment that your loved one is going to like, or also having all of the skills to live at that level of independence. That's often the first time our loved ones can be moving out. And if they've been home, that can be a challenge. So there's two different things that I would say on that. One, I think, if you feel like you've been on a list for several years, start looking, find your dream places, know the communities you'd like to rent in. And the skill building there's so much on the AHP website. There's a self-paced course on how to be a good tenant. Who do I complain to? How do I read the lease? What does a lease mean? There's a lot there. I think I'm also seeing, I've seen a couple of families who have done go away for a weekend and try it out with their loved one in their own home to get a taste of that independence, learn what the pitfalls are, learn what happens but to making sure, because I think often the support is just as important as the actual house and the ability to pay for it. And they're kind of two separate things. Why do we include medical expenses as income? Well, because what they're going to look at is, well, if Andrea's willing to pay $2,000 a month for that private health insurance for him, well, she should probably just pay his rent too. They want to see that's considered a gift in kind. And anything that you are doing to help out your loved one, they want to know that. But if it's balanced out by, well, this is the actual cost of his health insurance, it's just twice as much as he makes in a month, so that's why I pay it for him. So they cancel each other out. These are programs for over 18. Under 18, we would be talking about residential schools or family housing. And there are families that would qualify for these programs. It doesn't have to be just an adult with a disability. Section 8 and portable housing vouchers are all based on income. They're not based on the presence of a disability. Is there a way to find out where you are on the waiting list? I have not found a way online to find that out. I have called people and they just kind of laugh. And that tells me, all right, I don't need to worry about it right now. No, really, that happened to me. I called last year because we were really in between placements, kicked out of school. I can say that you're my people. We all know these things happen. And the woman just snickered. It's like, well, I can try to, I mean, I can try to look, but I mean, like, she's just like, go home, lady. You've been on the list for 2 years. So I think that finding a website is, I think, would be only if it were something that were site-based. An individual small site-based one might tell you how many people are on a waiting list on a website, but that will be the exception. Um, I have two kids, one a nonverbal autistic child who needs 24-hour help. We need, yeah. So when I see those kind of questions, I feel like I want to talk to you with my Federation hat on, more than in this workshop because your family exists. That is a challenge. I've lived in that. That is my household before my son went residential. I'm happy to talk to you about that, and to try to find some options for you. So you don't have your name on there, but if you want to put that in there, I'm happy to try to connect with you separately to talk to you about how we can help you with that. Could you send us the links for kids with disabilities? I'm not sure what that one means.
Maybe like the tenant thing, like how to be a good tenant.
Oh, the good tenant one. Yes, I will make
Yeah.
sure. I'll highlight some of them. We also have a skills library that I think is really wonderful. We have an intern each summer. Last year, I helped him. We made a video how to take out the trash. It's very simple, but sometimes having that visual saves that one more phone call home to ask, how do I do this? And I think sometimes young people are often more willing to learn from other young people than just dear old mom. So I find that that skills library is really helpful. Loading the dishwashers on there. There's a lot of good ones. Okay. Mm. Okay.
So I
So
think she meant links for housing for the kids with disabilities.
that was the person who had asked the question that needed
Yeah,
24/7
they
care now.
clarified. Yeah,
Yep.
yeah.
Yep. Yep. I'm happy to provide some resources on that. Definitely. Um, When your family member nears the top of a list, you will be contacted. This is what I was saying. They'll usually ask you to update the application, supply additional information, provide all the documentation. You do not want to miss a deadline. If you can't make it, contact them, ask them to reschedule. Remember, there's always someone in line behind you willing to take your spot. They will give you extensions, though, if you say, hey, you told me Tuesday at 10 and I can't make it. They will give you an extension if you reach out. Um, So this is a little grid that I opened up larger, so that you could see because I think it's helpful to see it a little bit larger. But this is your basic list. It talks about Section 8 is the portable. That's the gold. That's the one that we would suggest most people apply for. Champ is the blue. That's state funded. It lists the different ones that go through there and using your checklist to personalize it. And then the detailed directions here, this is the one with the screenshots of each application to walk you through to see what it is. And then the spreadsheet is here. So things to remember. Local housing authorities are like fast food restaurants. They have a lot of different items on the menu. So telling us that you applied at the housing authority doesn't tell me what you applied for. Was it Portable Section 8, site-based, the Massachusetts Rental Voucher Program? You really need to keep track of each program that you've applied for. In general, housing programs are based on income, not the presence of a disability. Some programs require a disability, but not a specific diagnosis. In fact, most are prohibited from asking under fair housing. Receiving SSI or SSDI is generally enough evidence. Sometimes a healthcare professional may be asked to confirm the person has a disability, but that's not usually required. Those would be very specific site-based programs. Supportive services are generally separate from affordable housing vouchers. For example, a housing program that allows a live-in aid does not specify whether that means adult foster care provider, a Department of Developmental Services shared living provider, or simply an unofficial assistant, like a roommate or a cousin who only moved in to help out. In fact, housing authority personnel may be completely unfamiliar with these programs, and often I find that's the case. It's important to make certain the rules of the services you are planning on using mesh with the rules of the housing situation. Again, it goes back to that first housing infographic that I gave you. Um, a close family member can't be a live-in aid, or their income would be considered in determining rent and eligibility by the housing program. However, the adult family care program requires the caregiver to live in the same unit. As a result, one would have to use adult foster care rather than adult family care. So knowing what exists and what from column A and column B you're going to combine together is really important. Um, this is all of the links of all of the different topics that are in here, and all of our little acronyms are listed at the back. I'm going to just stop to talk about one other thing, and then I'm going to leave us enough time for questions. Um, the other part that should you get to when you get to the top of that list, you're going to have a short amount of time to find someplace and be ready to move in. And most of the time, you're going to need first, last, and security to move in. That's going to be a large chunk of money. Currently, you're not allowed as the disabled individual to have more than $2,000 in a bank account, or you will stop your SSI. So opening something called an ABLE account or a stable account is really helpful so that that person can be saving money so that they have that security deposit first and last month's rent when they're ready to move in, but it's a protected asset if it's in an ABLE or stable account. That's really important, if it's at all possible to have some savings. The other part that I think a lot of people are unaware of is your loved one still needs a credit score. Not having a credit score is one of the only legal reasons that a landlord cannot rent to you with a Section 8 voucher. Starting with a prepaid credit card or a credit card from a local bank. I will give my all personal plug because I really like the little Middlesex Savings Bank that we have. They have been great at keeping it at a low amount and not increasing my son's credit every single month when he pays on time. I do not want him to have some credit card with $5,000 of available credit on it. But he needed something so that he could show that he is building his credit score. I manage that for him, and I like the little local bank because they don't give me a hard time when I go in to make a payment or he was hospitalized and I had to replace the card. They just made it very easy for me. But building a credit in their own name is really important, and not having savings and assets that are just in a regular savings account. And this also means that, again, if you have extended family who is, giving money, you want to make sure it's put into an account where it's not going to affect your loved one's benefits in any way. Um, One last thing, and then as I said, I will open it up to questions. We do have one-on-one appointments that you can schedule with us. I'm ready to fill out this application, or I got this letter and I don't know what it means, or this is what my person's situation is. What do you think would be the best housing routes for us to help you with? We are available to help you and give you more support with that. So let's see here. Is there an income limit on whether you can be or stay on the list? My son gets SSDI and part-time wages. Yes, and the income limits change, and they change by community, and they change um, by housing authority, but there are limits to what income you can make. In general, I'm going to say that it's probably 50% of the area median income is going to be your cap of that. And again, that'll be different depending on where you live in the state because our rental amounts are very different across the state. And your loved one would pay 1/3 of their income towards the rent. So if they get SSI and it's about $1,000 a month, they would pay $300 a month, no matter what the rental amount is. Yes, I will share all of my information so that you can contact me. Is there an expedited path in case of, oh, no. Unfortunately, this is another, and this is a direct message. I will chat with you about that. There are some exceptions when a family is in crisis, the Section 8 and different housing authorities will look at. Um, but that's again, I can reach out to you and chat with that, chat about that one. Do you have to have SSI or SSDI to be on the housing list? No, you do not have to, but that is usually the income source for most people that would be applying for this. Um, so we have about 15 minutes if anybody wants to unmute and ask me questions. I am going to put in my info right in here so that you have it. But does anybody want to unmute and ask a question? Especially some of you with loved ones who may be past age 22 and didn't get the support from DDS that you thought you would get or other circumstances like that. Those are frequently families that I see. I'm happy to troubleshoot or answer any questions that I can. Oh, I thought you guys were going to be the group of a million questions tonight. I'm shocked.
I know. I guess we answered them all in the chats.
Oh, good. Thank you
I
for
don't know.
that. Well, I will say just a couple other things then, because I could talk about housing all night long. Is that we also on the Autism Housing Pathways site have this presentation translated into multiple languages. The videos are there that you can watch. I think if you know somebody who needs access, or if you yourself, this isn't, English isn't your first language, and with me talking 800 miles an hour and all in acronyms, sometimes having it in your primary language can be helpful. But I'm going to just go over to here. And I'm going to show you. Oh, I do see a hand up. I'm just going to show you a couple of things. This was the Skills for Living library that I was talking about. And it has a whole list of here. This uh, um, adolescent checklist is really helpful. And I thought that was a really good one. And then there's one in here about technology. Technology is really amazing. One we're seeing a lot is this remote monitoring that people are having. So they can call someone and say, "Hey, I have a backache. Should I take a Tylenol?" Or, "Oh, my fire alarm's chirping. What do I do?" I feel like those are some really interesting ones. And those are programs that are being funded by DDS. So to allow somebody to live more independently that might not have otherwise been able to. But Carolyn, go ahead. What was your question?
Yes, I got one of those letters like everybody did about, staying on the list. So I was doing that on the computer on Friday. So then I asked the question as well tonight about can you find where you are on the list?
Yep.
So I started, which you said it's pretty hard to. I started Googling different things about, finding where I might be on the list. And I got a reply from a Section 8 search
Oh,
group. I'm just concerned that some of these might be scams.
yes. Do you have to
Yeah,
pay for the information?
I think so. I
Yeah.
cut it off before I
Yeah.
did. Yeah. So
Yeah.
I just wondered if you might know if that's a problem, you
I,
know.
I I would say that it's probably a big red flag if you have to pay for it because it
Uh-huh.
would be a public record if it was accessible and you shouldn't have to pay for that.
Uh-huh.
And in my knowledge, there isn't a way to check it online because everybody's names would be listed there. And
Yeah, that's true. That's
so
true. Well, I was just concerned that now I'm getting emails, like multiple emails daily from this Section 8 search group, section8search.org. So I'm concerned to try and
would
block
you
them.
would you forward one to me so that I can
Sure.
confirm with Kathy? Because Kathy has been doing this for decades and I always defer to her because some of the things that we get because they are nonprofits and very underfunded, they look really terrible and the fonts are off and you're like, is this a real website even? That 18 Section 8 site, it's like, who designed this? Well, somebody designed it without a big marketing budget is the answer. So before I tell you for sure that it's a no, let me take a look at it and find out for you.
I'll send it over tomorrow.
That would be great. Um, The other part, somebody asked in there, anything to help students 18 to 22 help living living on their own sooner than later. Love this question. Thank you for doing that. I think the biggest part is to start thinking about what they want and whatever their ability is to do that. My son is not able to go to an IEP meeting and say, "Hey, I want to live near my family and be able to go to the pool." But we did one with clip art, and he cut out all of the things that were important to him and put those on a poster board and presented that at the IEP meeting. So there's still a way for people to participate, whatever their ability is. And on the AHP website, let me see if I can find it because I really like it. Hold on. It says preparing your family member for living, and there's housing workbooks and then living skills. And these are free. It's not like you have to pay to get these. But the housing workbooks are here at an eighth grade level or an easy reader or the one with the social story. The social story one has a note for helpers doing this. If we pull up the eighth grade one, it talks about, okay, I'm at the back page of this, page 36. Let's go to the top. Apparently, I've showed this a few times. Um, but it talks about where do I want to live? What's my lifestyle? Do I like to be around a lot of people? Do I like it to be quiet? Um, and I just think it's really helpful to get people to start thinking about it and to find out what that child, that young adult wants, because we're often deciding for them. I took a wonderful workshop. I don't know if anybody has ever seen Cheryl Ryan Chan speak before, but if you ever get the opportunity, she is wonderful. She does a workshop called Stop It, the things that we do that impede progress. And what she said that has really stuck with me, and I love my mom, I miss her every day, but she said, "Would you want a whole life planned by your mom?" Oh, I don't know. Do I want that? So one of the things I've started doing for my 21-year-old is talking to more of his teachers and what do they like because he is different and they're practically peers at this point at he's 21. Because, with me, he wants the car silent. He doesn't want me to listen to music. With them, he'll come home and I'll be like, "What were you guys rocking out to in the car? What was that?" So I think that can be really helpful too, to get as many people involved in planning and not just, "Oh, I know what's best." He liked puzzles when he's 5. He must still love puzzles now. So I think that's really helpful. And how about with the application process and finding a place? So I will also put that right in there because this one here. Mm, I might not find it quickly enough. I will find it and put it in on my list when I send Amy this tomorrow. But it is that, um, oh, a place of my own. This is the one. I will put this link right in there so you have it tonight. So this is free, and it's a course that you go into and you pick the sections that you want to go through, and it talks about um, the rental process, what skills, budgeting, making a plan, and you can start and stop anywhere you want to as you go. So this would be for somebody that, is in a spot to fill these things out on their own, but it's really, really helpful. So I would definitely share that with your students. That would be great. Talks about the importance of a credit score, how to build credit, how not to get in trouble with credit. Really helpful. All right. DD helps more for 18 and above for everyone regarding to housing. So DDS at age, probably around age 21, will come and do a assessment of your loved one and a caregiver assessment. We just went through that in my family a few months ago. And they are looking at whether your loved one is safe and healthy at the family home, or if when they turn 22, DDS needs to prioritize them for housing. The statistic, unfortunately, is somewhere around 250 young people get that voucher every year. And there are currently about 400 young people on a waiting list to get that spot. So while we do hope that it helps people, it is a very small population of people that will get that DDS priority one level 24/7 housing at age 22. It's a small bucket of people. It's small. And again, even as someone who has a priority one letter in their possession, I still apply for all of these housing vouchers because I know how tight the budgets are. And if we can offset that group home cost in any way, I know that will improve the lives of everybody. So thank you all so much for this. It can be a overwhelming topic because it talks about our loved ones growing up. It talks about money. It talks about, us not living forever to keep them tucked in at night. It can be, but there really is support with this. It's not something you tackle at once. It's a process. So don't be too overwhelmed. I tend to talk like a fire hose. Yes, so much information. But I want you to like have it all because some people can go and click through and tackle it on their own. I needed help, but some people can tackle it on their own. So thank you so much.
And thank you for being here and sharing your expertise with us. I know it's been very valuable for a lot of people. So what we'll do tomorrow is me and Andrea will connect and we will get all the information that we shared today and I'll send it out in an email to everybody towards the end of the day or maybe Thursday. So you guys can look out for that. And as always, feel free to reach out to us if you have any specific questions and we can always work with Andrea to maybe set up some time for you to have a little one-on-one meeting or something if you guys are have more questions specifically about your situation.
Exactly. Thank you. Thanks for hosting.
Yeah. Thank you so much. I'll see you
Have a good night,
guys.
everybody.